Hello and welcome to Retail Management BUS302, our week 3 lecture videos. This is the first video in the series. And this week we are going to be talking about the retail strategy and consumers and how your strategy affects the consumers. More specifically, we're going to be looking at things like the consumer buying process, the process that they go through, different types of buying processes. We're going to talk about some of the social factors that customers deal with, along with economic factors. Look at how retailers then group consumers into market segments, and then really focus on that retail strategy and talk about how a retailer will go through the process of creating a strategic plan and eventually finally develop a competitive advantage. At least that's the goal. The competitive advantage is the goal. So as we start off, we've been talking about retailing and this idea of providing goods to customers, right? And so as we think about that, probably one of the more important things to understand is the buying process that the consumer goes through when they're thinking about buying a product or service. So as we talk about this process, we should really look at what that process looks like, what the different steps are, and how we can, as retailers, can use that our understanding of that process to really create an experience for our consumers that they appreciate and enjoy. So this consumer buying process, it really begins when a customer or consumer realizes, hey, there's something in my life there's this need that's not being satisfied. There's something that I need. And then they start to go through the process of figuring out how they can satisfy that need. And so they'll evaluate some alternatives and everything else. And so that process looks like this: the need recognition stage, when we realize, hey, there's something in my life that I need. You begin searching information about that need, some different alternatives, and once you have that information and some ideas of what those options are for you, you'll evaluate your alternatives and how you can satisfy that need. You'll purchase the merchandise or service, and then you'll go through a post-purchase evaluation of your experience. So as we talk about that, the need recognition stage, again, there's this unsatisfied need. There's this trigger, something that says, hey, I need this, right? So, and we begin this process. Now, generally, we have two different types of needs. We have these utilitarian needs, which are satisfied when you accomplish a task, or you need something very specific, right? So you're just purchasing to meet that very basic need. Shopping is pretty effortless and it's easy, and you can go to Sam's or something like that. And then there's hedonic needs, which is more of something that you're looking for entertainment, something emotional, maybe a recreational experience, right? So sometimes you'll need to go to a department store, specialty store, and those tend to be a little bit more difficult the hedonic needs are a little bit more difficult to shop for, right? So needs can be fulfilled by stimulation, status, power, some adventures. So that's the hedonic side. Okay, so when you start looking at canyon resorts and spas, right, they focus what they're wanting to do is make the consumer, give them an experience, right, that they're the center of the attention. They provide all sorts of things like spa services, nutritional consultants, workshops, right, this healthy gourmet cuisine, all at this ranch, right, to inspire your well way of life, that idea. So this is definitely looking at a more of a hedonic type need. Right. So again, we're going through the need recognition process. Now, sometimes what happens is, as consumers, we have multiple needs, right? There's always things that are going on in our lives, and sometimes our needs are conflicting, and they can cause a little bit of angst in us as we start looking at the conflicting needs. And so that's where sometimes these needs will be competing for attention, and right. So we need to understand that as retailers. So and sometimes as retailers, we need to stimulate this whole process, right? Help people understand that they have some unsatisfied needs, and help them realize that they need certain things, and maybe help them introduce them to products that they didn't even know they needed, right? So this can be done through maybe visual merchandising, or maybe a salesperson, some some sort of social media, those kind of things. So this idea of need recognition, okay? So once we go through that process and we realize, hey, we have this need as a consumer, we then begin searching for information, right? So we can use internal sources, past shopping experience, things that, our past experience, things that we're familiar with, right? Hey, this worked really well in the past. This is what I'm going to do. Or we can use external sources, word of mouth, advertising, internet, social media, right? So the amount of information searched really depends on how the value of the search, and sometimes even how much you're going to be spending, the amount of money you're going to be spending, right? Technology has helped bring the cost of the search down. And so there's a lot of different things that you need to be aware of. Some things that will affect the search, right? How many competing brands, the number of retail outlets, how much time you have to make a purchase. The example that I would use right now is me going through the process of trying to, I just had finally accepted my wife's recommendation that I purchase a new vehicle. And the reason is my vehicle has 357,000 miles. And so I am going through this, went through this process of searching for information. My internal source, hey, I like the car that I have. It has 357,000 miles. Why don't I use the same thing? And then using external sources, searching consumer reports, things like that. I was able to do that all at home. I was able to use technology and able to look for vehicles at multiple car dealerships, all because of technology, and I didn't have to go anywhere. So it made my job a lot easier. So as you go through this search, right, the technology has really made this whole process a lot easier for consumers. The other thing is the characteristics that you're looking at. If you're seeking, again, hedonic benefits, it generally takes more time because you're looking for a specific experience, something like that. How the locus of control, how in control you want to be. And then if there's more competition out there, again, you're going to have to do more search. And when do you need to buy something, or how long do you have? So in my case, I don't need to purchase a car right now. My car still runs, and therefore I have time to look and everything else. It's not a time constraint where it broke down yesterday and therefore I need something tomorrow, right? So all these things are part of this information search in this whole process. Again, looking at ways to now reduce the information search. So how informed are your salespeople? So what do you do as a retailer to help consumers? Well, understanding what they need, right? So looking at the amount of information you can provide either on a website or through salespeople, or maybe the type of services that you're providing, if that's important. Making sure that you understand what the competition has and making it easy for consumers to maybe even check the price. I can think of Progressive home insurance for saying, hey, we're going to show you what all of the competitors are going to, these are the competitors' prices, right? Maybe the fact that you have an everyday low pricing strategy, we're going to keep the lowest prices all the time. Maybe that will help bring consumers in. If it's if it's a specific or a price sensitive type product, right? So all of these things can help reduce the information search and give your consumers a little bit extra value as they go through the process. Now, once you have all the information and you've got, you've brought basically what the consumer is going to do through the information gathering, they're going to look at the various products, they're going to narrow their search down to maybe one or two products, and then they're going to say, okay, I need to evaluate the alternatives. I've got these two products, and therefore I need to make a decision. So how do they make the decision? Well, it's different for every customer, right? So sometimes it's based on a color or a price or something like that. So the multi-attribute attitude model, this is what retailers should really focus on, is understanding how a customer sees a retailer or the product or service. You have to understand that the customer sees all these things as a variety of characteristics, as a number of things that they're going to either want to be part of, or they want to model in their life, or don't want to model in their life, they want to be associated with it, all those things. So what you want to do is predict the customer's evaluation based on important attributes. How does this work? Let me try and explain it. So the beliefs about performance, right? Mentally, the objective information. Uh, do you think this is a good, in my case, car, good vehicle? Well, based on performance, right? The vehicle that I have, 357,000 miles, tells me, yes, this is really a great, it's a great, this vehicle really works well. It performs long term. There's very little, right? All those things. So when we start thinking about some different things, so maybe performance about about the product is really important. And so we would then say that's the number one thing. And then we assign weights to these various characteristics. So again, color of the car, yeah, color is not that important to me. The overall performance, number of miles you're going to get out of it, gas mileage, all these different things. So we look at these different attributes, assign a weight, okay, and say, okay, how important this is to the customer. Is it 10% of the decision, 5% of the decision, 25% of the decision, and then have the consumer rate those on a scale of 1 to 10. And then what we do is we develop a scorecard, so to speak, based on all of those things, and we evaluate the retailers and things. So what does that look like? For instance, performance beliefs, right? So the economy, convenience, assortment, product, right, of a retailer. For young women, parent with 4 children, right? All these things. So you would rate those areas based on, again, the overall valuation of a young single woman or a parent with 4 children. So the characteristic young single women, it's an importance of 4 versus a parent with 4 children, the importance of 10, right? So convenience for a young single woman, that's really important, 10, but for a parent with 4 children, not so much. I wouldn't agree with that. Assortment, right? So what we're doing is we're looking at these characteristics, economy, convenience, assortment. We're rating them for that group, young single women or a parent of 4. And then we look at the different options. Well, you have a supercenter, a supermarket, or a grocer. Okay, a supercenter, economy, cheap, a good value. It's rated as a 10, so that would be really important, right? So 10 out of 10, that'd be help us score that area, right? Supermarket maybe is an 8, right? And a grocer is a 6. So as you go through, you start looking at the importance. Now, how do you get those numbers? Well, if you take the 10, which is the importance of the economy for the parent with 4 children, multiply it by the 10 for the supercenter, that gives you 100. Then if you go through and you do the rest of the numbers, 2 times 4 is 8, 8 times 9, 72, that's 80. We have 100, that's 180, and then 4 times 3, 12. Add all those numbers together. So you take the value in the parent with the 4 children, how they rate it, times the specific supercenter, 10, 3, right? Multiply those two together and then add those numbers, you get 192. So for a parent with 4 children, the 192 is the highest area. This is where they're going to go and shop, right? So they're going to evaluate and say, hey, the supercenter is the best place for me based on economy, convenience, assortment, and availability of product. That's how that works. Now, for a young single woman, right, and we could do the same thing, right? The internet grocer economy is times 6, not that important. It's 24. For the single woman, it's convenience. The internet grocer is more convenient, so 10 times 10, that's 100. And then the assortment, 5 times 5, it's about, that's 25. But then the availability of product information, that's really important to that person, not as important for the parent with 4. So that's a 9. 9 times 8, again, that's 72. And then we would add those together. For the young single woman, that would be her choice would be buying things through an internet grocer because that's the highest attributes. So that's how we use this information. So again, we use this multi-attribute attitude model, right? And we see that it gives us an opportunity to really understand what customers are thinking about when they're evaluating the different retailers, right? When they're evaluating the channels that they're going to, and it it helps the retailers understand the importance of each criteria to the consumer. So it's not like one size fits all. It is that certain consumers have certain beliefs, and we need to understand that and know and it helps us define who our target is, who our target consumer is, And once we understand that target consumer, we're able to serve them better. So this evaluation of alternatives in the process is really important for us as retailers to understand how we can meet and develop that target market. And so the other thing is, it helps us as retailers to understand what we need to do to get into this idea of the consideration set, which is, in order to be even in the mind of a consumer, what are we going to need to do in order to get them to come into our doors, right? So if we go back to, right, the idea of being economical, the super center is very economical. That's really not that important to the to the young single woman. For that young single woman, for her, it's all about convenience. The size of a super center is not very convenient. So how do we as a retailer for a super center make our store more convenient, right? So that we can get that consumer in. So it helps us understand what we need to do to get into that consideration set, right? And it really helps us understand what's going on in their mind. So it really helps us target our consumer and really make sure we're meeting their needs. Okay, so along those process, Senda, which the Senda is this particular company, they offer its customers a benefit not available from competition, fair trade. So maybe if that's really important to your customers, having fair trade products, right, then this would be a company that you would want to do business with, fair trade products, because that's really important. To be honest, I don't know what Senda does. It's not high on my list. Okay. So once we have gone through this process, so the first thing is we realize there's a need. Second thing, after we realize there's a need, we begin searching for information. We look at to develop a list of possible alternatives. We evaluate those alternatives, and then we purchase the merchandise, and that's where we're at. Now, we understand that you need to understand customers don't always purchase a brand with the highest evaluation, right? So maybe that the highest evaluation isn't available where you're going to go purchase. So you might not be the first choice. So what we want to do is try and, again, figure out ways that we can get into the customer's consideration area, make sure that we're there, and at least get it that if you're not being considered, right, that's the key. So you want to make sure that you're being considered, because you might just making it in the consideration set, you might be the end up with the right your product getting purchased, right? So ways that you can do this, ways that you can possibly become that product that's purchased, is make it easy for your consumers to purchase your product. Don't make it hard. Provide as much information as you possibly can to either reinforce a high evaluation or maybe help move a consumer's perception of your product into, share a little bit more info. Hey, it's more convenient, these things, right? And then the better you do at providing information to your consumer, making sure that they have all the information they need, right? Then they aren't going to make a mistake. They're going to make the right product, purchase the right product. Now, the idea of create a sense of urgency or scarcity. This is something I don't know that it really works as much today as it did in the past. But if you can find a way to help a consumer, help a customer understand, hey, there's some urgency to this. If they aren't in any rush, finding a way to help them understand that, hey, you know what, purchasing this today is a good idea. You got to create that sense of urgency and make it worth their while. That's one of those last things that you can do as a consumer, as a retailer. So finally, we move into the last part of this process, which is the idea of a post-purchase evaluation. So with a post-purchase evaluation, what the consumer is going to do, is they're going to then say, okay, how well did this particular product or service meet my needs, but not only that, meet my expectations? So if the expectation was this is going to be a great thing and everything else, great product, everything's perfect, and it doesn't turn out that way, they're going to have a negative perception, and that's going to hurt you in the future. So because the post-purchase evaluation becomes part of that internal information that the consumer will use in the future. So you want to make sure that you do everything you can to help a customer all right, develop a good experience so that they will continue to come to you as a retailer. You'll get that store loyalty and brand loyalty. Now, the idea of purchase, this post-purchase cognitive dissonance, that's where you think, hey, this is going to be great, and have this great expectation, then you find out it's not, and it's really bad, and you walk away feeling yucky about the purchase, right? So you don't want your consumer to do that. You want to do everything you can to make them feel good about the decision, good about the product, good about the purchase. And so understanding that they're going to go through this process because it will affect you in the future is really important. So that's the consumer buying process. And now that we have an understanding of that, we'll continue on and talk more about how this can affect us as retailers in the next lecture video.